POW Larry Stark to come and tell us about some of his trips that he went to find live Americans. Mr. Stark?
You better just stand up for a few seconds before they all fall asleep. Stretch out a little bit.
Oh, no, they did that.
Take a break.
No, no break.
Your turn, Larry.
My turn. I've got to give you guys a break. It's instant. Get up.
And you stand at the
Yeah.
podium?
Okay.
Do you need to sit or can you stand? It's on. Now it's on. You want to stand? Or do you want to sit?
Yeah, I can sit. Some of you folks may want to move over here to get a better view of this wonderful facade.
Yeah. Is this on? Oh, there you go. There you go.
No, I didn't know it, but my, I'm
In the
sorry.
microphone.
That got
In the
sound.
microphone.
Gonna do something a little different today. I made several trips, over 30, to Indochina. All those weren't to Vietnam. Most of them were to Laos, or I made 15 trips in the last, let's say, 10 years to Laos. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to give you a chronology, right? On this trip I did this, and this trip I did that. But along the way I had some interesting things happen on my trips. And so what I want to do is to, like a collage. And some of these trips are going to be dovetailing. Like, for example, I went into San Sai, which is way the hell up in the mountains. And it's near the border with Vietnam, but in Laos. And San Sai is a very interesting place, hard as hell to get to. But I'll just tell you, because that's the first item I want to talk about. What was I looking for when I went there? Well, this first trip that I made, I was looking for the bearded man and the boy and his grandfather. And I have a picture to help you if you want to look at it afterwards. But the bearded man and the boy. Well, never did get his name. I was told, and had people looking, that eventually his remains were taken from near the border with Vietnam, maybe 20 miles from Sen Sai, or 10 even. But at any rate, very rugged area. They brought them, they told me, to San Sai. So they may be there. Bearded man. So how many recall the bearded man and the boy? Anybody? No. Okay. Well, I have a picture, and people are saying, especially Milliner, who's passed now, but he was saying, I know this guy. I know this guy. And we got to find out where he is. Anyway, that was towards the first part of my going over there. To see this guy. To find this guy. Well, I didn't find him, but lo and behold, the people told me, you know, his son is around here. This little guy in the picture, his son is now 22 years old, and he's a little older than that now, and he's a big, tall guy. And you know what? He looks exactly like who Milner said his dad was. It's spitting image. Puts the two together, and they look like the same. And they call him American. The people around there, they razz him, they don't like him, they don't treat him very nicely. And they call him the American. And he could pass as an American in any street of our town in the U.S. Anyway, so that's kind of was one of the first little trips I made. There's a lot, so I gotta move on. But I went to see this, I'm sorry, one last thing. I tried to track down this American. I told him, bring him to Sansai, and I will be there on such and such a day. They brought him to Sansai 10 days ahead of time. And finally he said, I gotta go. I gotta go. He said, I gotta go and take care of, he didn't tell me, but he told the people, I gotta go and take care of the farming, because that's what we do, and now is the season. Okay, so he left the day before I got there. I didn't have a chance to talk to him. And there's a lot of that for me. The 30 years, there's so much of that. Sometimes I say, hey Lord, whose side are you on? I mean, come on, one day, can't you keep one more day? Anyway. Then on another occasion, the guy, I got a call from this guy, Dan Smith. He says, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. He says, about POWs. I said, okay. He said, I'm in Seattle. But he worked for Continental Airlines, which is no longer with us, but he says, hey, I can fly almost anywhere, so we can meet. And then now Roger's still there with Roger, when he did come to town, I talked to him. And here's the story he tells. It's incredible in a way, but it's indicative of what Roger's saying. Nobody follows up on these reports. I mean, Admiral Moore said there's 60. And by the way, in this book, An American in the Basement, they mentioned 60 POWs in Laos. And so I said, well, what's the story, Dan? And he said, well, there's a Bai Bang paper mill northwest of Hanoi. It's a Swedish aid project. And ever hear of that one? The Bai Bang paper mill. We should have some of those old bikers over here. But anyway, the Bai Bang paper mill. It's an aid project. These guys had the Sunday off, so they took a bike ride, motorbikes. They're going along and they see these guys working on the road. And all of a sudden the guard comes out with a gun and says, you can't go there. He said, why not? We're working up here. He said, no, you can't go there. So then, at the same time, he talks to these guys that are working on the road crew, and he said, get out of here. You got to get out of here. We don't want you to be seen by these guys. So this guy comes, so as they're departing, this guy figures, and I can picture it as clear as day. I could picture it. This guy says, he whirled around, and I'll tell you like as close as I can, like the Swede who was working at the Bai Bang paper mill, the Swedish aid project, like he said, because he's later recorded this saying. He whirled around, he shouted, he said, tell the world about us. And then they took him away at gunpoint. So Dan comes to me and he says, I'm sitting in Pattaya Beach. I hope you can follow this because they're going to be jogging back and forth. I'm sitting in Pattaya Beach, Thailand. Dan was sitting in Pattaya Beach, Thailand. This guy comes up to him and he says, hey, are you a veteran from Vietnam? And he said, yes, I am. And he said, I got to tell you something. And he told him that story because he was one of the bikers. He came back to the hall, the mess hall, and he said, hey, guess what? I saw some Americans. He said, well, how'd you know they're Americans? Well, the guy spoke English with an American accent. I got this on tape. I didn't bring it today, but got it on tape. So I said, Dan, Accuracy in Media is having a meeting this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon or something. I'll call Reed Irvine, who's a friend of mine, and I will ask him if he could come and state the case, his case. I said, I believe the guy, there's no reason to lie. Okay, he said. So he did. He came there and he said that. He told this group of very influential people and very knowledgeable people and very patriotic people, and that what happened. And so we tried to get, and there's even a poster that says at the bottom, tell the world about us, and shows this one guy. Anyway, so I hope you followed that, but he was in Pattaya Beach. This guy came up to him this week, and told him the story. Dan came home, then he went to the local television. He knew the guy, I think, and he said, hey, I got a hell of a story, I have to tell it to help. Now it's on Dan. The Swede had to tell somebody to get it off his conscience. Now Dan has to tell somebody to get it off his conscience. So he tells me that this is what happened. And so he says, yeah. Well, I just can't put that on the TV. I can't interview you and you tell your story. That ain't gonna work, I mean, people are gonna say, well, that's crazy. This guy's nuts. Okay, we have to call the guy. This is the TV guy now. I have to talk to him. Okay, so they started calling. Well, this guy's name was Stein Gooding. And apparently Gooding is like Smith. Very popular, very common. So he starts calling, I don't even think they knew the city, but they started calling around anyway. End of the story is that he called 14 different places. And he was ready to give up. And finally he called and he said, is Stein Gooding there? And the lady said, because he's going through the phone book and stuff, lady said, yes, he's my son. Was he in Vietnam? Was he in North Vietnam? She said, yes, he was. He came home recently. Can I talk to him? And she said, he's at the bar. Do you have the number for the bar? Yes. Got the number for the bar. Called the bar. He said, is Stein Gooding there? I said, yes. He said, so then the rest of the story follows. So I won't go into detail except that he told him, and he recorded, and I have a copy of that recording, what Stein Gooding said. We were there, we were on a bike, we came to the guys, the one guy whirled around and said, tell the world about us, and we came back to the mess hall. And by the way, I visited that by-day paper mill on one of my trips. I said, well, I gotta go out there and find a place and see what's going on. So I went out there and I talked to a Canadian. It's hard to get in. Drivers are the best asset you can have when you're in a foreign country like Vietnam or Laos. And they can do stuff. They can do stuff here too, but they can do stuff there. So anyway, he says, okay. So I said, I want to go in and talk to this guy. So he goes up to the gate where there was a guard. And he says, this guy is an American, he'd like to talk to somebody here. And he said, he can't come in, this is not a public place. So I told the guy, go back and use your magic, man. So he goes back, and he kept saying, I said, if you need a little money or something, I get you a little money. So he goes back, and he's bartering back and forth with the guy. And he says, okay, you can go in. You can talk to this Canadian guy who was one of the guys working on the project. So I went in and talked to him, and he said, yes, I remember the story. I still find it hard to believe. All right, so at any rate, so moving along here. Is that clear? You have any questions on that? I mean, he followed pretty well. The third situation is where I have a friend of mine. She's a Laotian princess, and a real one. And there are many of them, and she's not the only one. But anyway, I became good friends with her when she heard I was working on the issue, and I was interested in Laos and all that. And so we were working together, and I said, look, I'm going to be working in Laos a lot, and I could use your help. She won't go back, because I'll arrest her immediately, so she won't go back. So anyway, but she says, there is a guy, he's my cousin, and he was one of the supporters of the very high up in the military during the war, and he still is fairly high up, but he's not in the military. So I said, how can I meet him? So in here's a little tidbit. I said, hey, if you want to really convince somebody that you were there, you take a picture with someone that they know is from there. So she remembered that. And so she said, oh, I have the picture with you and I. I'll give you the picture. I'll write a note to this guy. And why is this guy important? Because, and Roger, you'd be interested in this, he was the one who was the guard to the Secretary of Defense for Laos. And he also was tied into this guy who I have and I'm going to read this. I hope I'm not boring you guys, but this is good stuff. And Roger, I think it could be helpful to you too. But the subject of this intelligence information cable is records maintained by a senior Lao government and Communist Party official listing American MIAs from the war in Vietnam. From the war, I'm sorry. I didn't want to do that. From the war in Laos. So, he said, well, yeah, that's interesting. So then it goes on to say what they're talking about. Lao PDR Minister of National Defense, like the Secretary of Defense, his name's Kam Tai Sipandong, maintains in the ministry a central, highly classified report of American pilots captured by Lao and Vietnamese Communist forces during the war in Laos. So that's the key here. This record also provides details on the disposition of captured pilots to prisoner of war camps at several locations in the northern sector of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, including the Son Tay camp. This record has been kept from the onset, in other words, the beginning of the bombing in Laos, and previously held in safekeeping at Kam Tai's former military headquarters in Sam Nua. They say Sam Nua, that they mean Vien Sai, and I've been to Vien Sai. And they have really a city underground, carved into the mountains. And we lost many trains trying to go in there and get them, because you got to go down that gauntlet, and they have anti-aircraft set up along the side. Anyway, by the way, that's the same place they kept Herlick and Shelton. I went there and they said, oh, you want to go on a tour? I said, yeah, I want to go on a tour. And he said, well, okay, this afternoon, 1 o'clock. So this one little guy comes up to me, one of the tour guys, and he comes up to me, and so I started talking to him. I said, do you know where the cave where they kept Schultz and Herdicka. And he said, yeah. He said, can you take me there? He said, yes. Now, I'm not the first one to be there. And Mills Griffin and a group of birds had gone and they showed her the place. But anyway, there aren't very many that have been there. So I went and I said, hey, he said, when do you want to go? I said, well, when can you go? He said, now. I said, let's go. So we go out there, and here carved in the hole in the side of this mountain, like, and it's got bars across it. You see it. And that's where he kept Herdicka and Schultz. Anyway, and this is where the headquarters for the Path of Law was. Okay? So, now, how does my friend fit into this? She said, Larry, take my letter and the picture showing you and me together, and you take them and you give them to this guy who was the bodyguard for the Secretary of Defense. And he knew all this stuff. And I'm thinking, at this point I didn't have this yet. But I'm thinking, later I said, black, we'll call it the black box. Every time an American was shot down in Laos, they recorded it. So Roger, when they say they don't have anything, they don't know anything, you tell them you find a black box and you'll know a whole lot more than you did now. And there are only a few people that know about the existence of this black box. And nobody wants to talk about it. And there was a guy named General Sauce Petrossi. And Roger, I'm sure you remember him. Sauce Petrossi is the general who said, when they were negotiating back and forth trying to get the Americans to recognize the Lao and talk to them about the prisoners, he said, we have tens of tens, meaning maybe 100. But he meant more than that. Okay, so anyway, if you really wanted to do something, and if you're our government and you really want to do something, you gotta get that frickin' black box. I mean, if I could come that close to it, all these guys are clandestine operation and all that, but there's no desire, there's no will. The thing is to do with Roger. Put them off as much as you can, put them off as long as you can, tell them as little as you can, and give them what you have to, only that. No cooperation, no follow-up, no, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to go get that box. You'll never hear that. And it's a shame. But that's where we are today with that. Anyway, the case is still not closed on the black box. There may be some way for, to get that. But one of the ways to get it is to go to Sauce Petrossi's, General Sauce Petrossi, go to his son, who's a colonel. I think he's retired now in the army, the Pathet Lao army. Here's a clue. He tells people, and he's told our people, Americans who have sons missing or brothers or whatever. He says, hey, if you give me the guy's name, I will try to find out what happened to him. I'm not going to say whether he's a prisoner or not, but he said, I'll try to find out what happened to him. How can you be so sure that you can really find out what happened to him? You can be sure if you have access to the information in the black box. That's what I maintain. Now this colonel is the one who is the advisor to the movie about the CIA in Laos. what was it called? Anybody remember? Anybody see it? Anyway, there's a movie about Laos. The pilots, they had gone back. They worked with this guy, and he would take them wherever they wanted to go. And he would tell them, I don't think we should go here, it might be dangerous, whatever. That to me means, because they told me that in North Vietnam one time, you don't want to go there, it's dangerous, the roads are very bad, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, that's our, they wouldn't take me. I mean, if they won't take you, you can't go. But anyway, so I think, and again, if you have the desire to do this daggone thing, I mean, the guy has a hotel in forget the town now, but anyway, he has a hotel there in northern Laos, and he's a very friendly, talkative guy. I tell you what, he's got on the wall, as big as that section right there, from the table up. He's got all the memorabilia, all the weapons, all the shells, all the guns, all the whatever. Right in the middle, he has a 4x8 POW MIA flag. I gotta get that picture out. I have a picture. Anyway, let's move on to, now, I don't know how many of you, I don't know how many of you have this book by Amy Yarsinski, but anyway, it's well worth getting. And I thought, American in the Basement, so it's about Scott Spiker, and I said, well, I got enough just to keep track of what's going on with the Vietnam POWs without getting mixed up in Iraq. There's a section in here, that's about American POWs. And the reason I asked Roger about Lacey is because Lacey gave deposition to the Senate Select Committee. And I'm going to read a couple of those things. I know you're not supposed to do this, but I think it'll shorten the time it takes to do it. Anyway, Lacey he's not a dingbat, you know. He's a brigadier general. He was a brigadier general. He died in 1970, I think. Not 1970, I'll get it. But anyway, hell of a guy. They put him in charge of our nuclear program for the Air Force before he retired, and but he was always interested in POWs. And so I probably want to move along a little bit, but what I'm going to tell you about here is about two Americans. Okay. And I got all mixed up because Yarsinski does not make these things clear. So she jumped from Scott Spiker to Tommy Geist to Pogriba. So I'm saying, hey, I had to read this thing about 4 or 5 times. Here's what it all boils down to. We have two Americans that Lacey was, and it's in the book, so if you don't believe me, believe the book. If you don't believe the book, well, you can join the CIA. They don't believe anything we say. Anyway, Lacey had been looking around and interested in POWs. One of the POWs was Progira early on, I think 1965. He said, and he was in Saigon at the time, and he was flying. Generals don't fly very often, but he was flying some, and he was monitoring in a C-130 the calls, the information coming out of China, and Russia.
I don't know about Russia, it's China, yes.
China and,
North Vietnam border.
yeah, maybe it was, well, it's in here. Anyway, he's monitoring, here. That day, he was mission commander aboard a command and control C-130 monitoring Russia and China frequencies. Then he heard that Major Dean Pogriba F-105 was hit. We directed him, so they're doing two things. They're getting listening for information, but they're also directing Pogriba to get to some safe place. So they said, make a 140 degrees, go out to the Gulf, and we'll pick you up. So he should have made it, but he didn't make it, and he got shot down. And he got shot down where? He got shot down in China. Bad news there. So he says, hey man, I'm going down. I'm okay, and I'm not injured, but I'm going down. And so the CIA went, said, we'll go get this guy. They went and got him in China. And I don't know how they do it. Maybe they work with the Chinese, probably do. And they brought him to Vietnam with the intention of turning him over to the Laotians, who in turn would bring him to the U.S. What's wrong with our guys? They for 2 years. They fed him, they sent him food, they had airdrops. And again, this is done, I have to believe, with the knowledge of the North Vietnamese. Anyway, they did all that for 2 years. And then Lacey said he lost track of them. But he said, let's see. Then he was peppered with questions. This is important. He was peppered with questions by the Senate panel. So our people knew that the plane went down in China. Yes, sir, said Lacey, General Lacey. Was the CIA involved in it? Yes, sir, said Lacey. After General Simlar called me and he said, hey, we've got a problem because of a downed aircraft. We don't know whether the Chinese are going to come into the war or not. And he said, we're going to go get him. We're going to send people in to bring him out. Well, they got him out. They got him to Vietnam. I guess he was recaptured again because the next time, and there's a lot in between, but the next time, very briefly, the President Reagan at the time said, yeah, let's get Lacey in here. I want to talk to him. So he brought Lacey in. Lacey testified. Lacey talked with the President, Baker, Nancy Reagan, and the guy, what's his name anyway, the one who's kind of the liaison with the families in the White House, Davenport, I think. Anyway, somebody. So these guys then, so they said, let's send them in. Are you willing to go in to Lacey, the President, to Lacey? Are you willing to go in to North Vietnam and see what you can find out? I'll cover for you. I'll get you all, I'll get you a diplomatic passport. He said, yes, I will. So he goes in, and they go to one camp with Le Duc Tho. I don't know what Le Duc Tho's position is, but like he's number 3 man or something like that. Okay? So Le Duc Tho goes with him to the first camp that General Lacey wanted to go to, because he'd heard there might be American prisoners here. He went there weren't any. Then he said, I want to go to this other prison, 30 miles northeast of Hanoi. Okay. So he says, he went there. Et voila, what's going on here? He says, I met Pogriba. He was there with 3 of the 5 men that had finally, after 2 years, gone in to get him and bring him out, and they were all captured. Maybe 2 were killed because they only had 3 there, but Pogriba plus 3. He said, how did you know it was Pogriba? Well, I knew him. What did he say? He said he didn't know why they abandoned him there. And so anyway, and then as I said, he supplied him for 2 years. Are you saying they supplied these guys in the field for 2 years? Yes, sir. Without picking them up. This is the Senate committee. Yes, sir. My involvement in that after 2 years ended because he retired in 1977. Lacey did it. Then Lacey went to Laos, and there he learned about 16 Americans. And I'll skip through here. Well, there's one humorous part where he says, the committee said, I think we're missing something. I have gone to Hanoi inquiring of Les Docteaux and the prisoners of war. In my meeting with the president, he said he would like me to go in and determine if anybody was alive. And that's what he did. And he went in and he found Pogriba. He said, who do you submit your vouchers to? He said, the president. He said, no, I mean, who did you really submit them to? He said, I submitted them to the president. And who paid you? The president did. He gave you an envelope with money in it. But anyway, so